All right, welcome to Rattling the Brain, Season 2, Episode 3. Today we have a very special guest joining us. We have goaltender Paul Rosen. Paul competed in the Olympics 3 years for Team Canada. He is a mental health advocate, a spokesperson for mental health, shares his story. He has an amazing book called Never Give Up. We will link it below after. Great read. Hope you guys check that out. Paul, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Aaron. It's my pleasure.
All right, so kind of just to start off, get to know you a little bit. I know you were a multi-sport athlete when you were a kid, but kind of walk us through, your upbringing with sports.
So I was very fortunate. I have a brother who's 4 years older than me, and my parents worked really hard, but they didn't really follow sports or get involved. So my brother got me involved with all kinds of sports. I loved baseball. Baseball was my actual true love growing up. I was a catcher in baseball. That's how I became a goaltender in sled hockey and or para hockey. We'll get into that later, I'm sure. Obviously, loved hockey, loved volleyball. I loved football, but wasn't really a big fan of playing it. I loved watching it. Basketball a little, but really my three big sports were volleyball, baseball, and hockey.
So as you kind of got older, was it more of the transition into just hockey? Was that your decision, or did your parents kind of influence that
Baseball and hockey.
on
And
hockey?
no, it's more my brother. He pretty well influenced most of my sporting decisions. My parents were always working and did a lot of our growing up was with my grandparents, my mother's parents. They were a huge influence in my teenage years. My grandmother was from Kiev in the Ukraine, and my grandfather was from Warsaw in Poland. Both hardworking people, and so I got a lot of work ethic from them and from my dad. Uh, Really, hockey and baseball were my true loves, and baseball up until I was 15 when I destroyed my knee and couldn't catch anymore. And then hockey just went on in a different form.
Yeah, I introduced you in this podcast as goaltender Paul Rosen, but people don't know you actually started out as a forward playing AAA. You were a left winger, if memory serves. And it was one of those things where, your transition to goaltending was late. So kind of give us like a little bit of like an insight on what it was like to be a player at such a high level at such a young age.
Right winger, but that's okay. On the
Oh,
other side,
well,
uh, I loved. I loved. I was a big kid. I was a strong kid. I had a really good shot, and I wanted to become a professional. Whether it was playing in Europe, or I wanted hockey. I wasn't very good in school. Didn't finish my education. That's my only regret. I spoke to a team last night, a minor hockey team. I love doing that. And my only regret in life, really, I told them, was not getting a grade 12 diploma, not finishing high school, at least high school. And I'm a big education advocate for kids, especially because sports doesn't always work out.
yeah.
So for me, I was a big winger. I had a good shot. Loved playing hockey. Loved skating. As my knee started to get really bad and it was harder and harder to play, when I did lose my leg, I transitioned into goaltending because I had that opportunity as a catcher in baseball. And anybody that knows the game of sled hockey or para ice hockey, and why I'm changing that is now when I started playing, it was called sled hockey. It's now called para ice hockey. So para ice hockey, I was a catcher in baseball and it adapted very easily. And I never wanted to, Aaron, I never wanted to play just to play. I wanted to play to be the best, the very best.
Mhm.
That's why I got, when I started playing that, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, I got myself a goalie coach, Jamie McGuire goaltending. He really changed my mindset of what it was going to take to be the best of the best. And I put a lot of my just thanks
Mhm.
into him and his program and some of the guys that worked with me and didn't look at me as a disabled player. One of his shooters, Rumble, Jeff Rumble. He had a cannon shot, and didn't matter whether he hit me in the face or not. I was there to get better.
Yeah. I love that. And kind of just for the viewers to know on the podcast, right, is it was a little bit more of a difficult transition. It's a very black and white thing when you talk about athletes and their upbringing, right? You hear that they played hockey, they went to the pros, but there's a lot of stuff that, goes on. And especially in your story, there's a great load of information there. So can you kind of go back and just walk us through, that one game where you got that leg injury as a player, as a young kid? And what was that kind of like? What was kind of going through your head at the time of the injury?
Yeah. So it was May of 1975. I was playing at the old Dunlop Arena in Barrie, Ontario. It's now Fire Hall. I was coming around the net to stuff the puck in as a right winger. My right skate caught a rut in the ice. My body turned, my leg did, my skate didn't, and I spiral fractured my leg all the way up, tore three of the four ligaments, spiral fractured the leg terribly to a point where it didn't look like I'd ever skate again. I don't really remember a lot about that. It was a long time ago. I'm almost 65. I was 15 back at the time. I do remember that I was in a cast from my toes to my groin with my leg turned in with a rope around the old plaster cast around my neck. It was about 50 pounds, and I was in it for 6 months. I do remember that. I was really depressed. And that's where, and I'm sure we're going to get into this, that's where my addiction journey started at 15 with my telephone call. I knew that was going to happen. My addiction started when I was 15 to painkillers, and it went on to many other things. But that's really where it started, and the transition to life was really hard because I didn't have school, and I was severely injured.
So, at the time when you first started, and I know you talk about this all the time, and it's something we're going to dive into heavy on here because it's really important to me to talk about like the mental health aspect, and addiction is a huge part of it, whether it's drugs, alcohol, even video games. There's so many gambling, there's so many different addictions that everyone deals with, and it's important to know where it kind of stems from. So, at the age of 15, obviously, you were going through a little bit of a tough time. What was the main thing that you kind of took away at the moment? What were you kind of thinking as your life was going down? And why did you rely so heavily on, painkillers and, stuff that you were addicted to?
So when it first happened, and I was in a lot of pain from the surgery and the injury, I never planned on being addicted to painkillers for the next 40 something years. I just took them because I was in pain. The thing that a lot of people don't understand, and a lot of athletes have addiction issues, is because you take the painkiller for the pain initially. The painkiller then sets the brain to say, "Oh my God, this is really good." Then you fall in love with the painkillers, or the alcohol, whatever the drug is. The drug doesn't work anymore. You take more and more and more, and then it becomes, after a certain amount of time, like you're taking candy. I say to a lot of people when I talk, it's like Skittles. I'm just taking a handful of Skittles, but the Skittles I'm taking are, life altering pain medication that's not meant to be taken that way. And that's what addiction is. So for me, it was my life started to spiral. I was doing terrible in school. I had a perceptual problem. I had dyslexia. I had failed grade 8 twice. I was made fun of all the time. So for me, I just didn't want to live. The demons started with me, and I had some things that happened to me when I was a kid that shaped and molded me into really not wanting to be around. And how I handled it was I was the clown. I made everybody laugh. I did stupid things so they would forget about the fact that I couldn't read and I couldn't write. That's what I turned it into, and that's why a lot of people in the entertainment industry, Robin Williams, one of my all-time favorites. You have problems with so many things. What do you turn to? You turn to comedy. I'm going to make them laugh at me. They're not going to see my defaults. They're not going to see how many problems I have in life. I'm going to make them laugh, and they're going to think, "Oh my God, Rosie, he's so funny. Oh my God, you got to be around Rosie, man. Have you heard him do this imitation? It's incredible." And then you forget about the fact that people called me an idiot and said I was stupid. So that's where it goes, Aaron.
Yeah, I feel that, like making other people laugh in a way, putting on that fake face. But once, you're by yourself, the lights get dark, you're sitting in your room and you kind of wonder what's going on. And people don't realize that the face that, and especially this is a big thing for athletes too, is the face that you show to every single person, the way everybody sees you isn't always how it is for athletes. People go through things, and it's not just athletes, it's people in
Yep.
general. So kind of talking a little bit about, heading towards like when you had your amputation, what was that experience like heading into it? So obviously it was a big process. Can you kind of walk us through, the steps and how it ended up happening?
Sure. So I had many, many surgeries. I had a knee replacement that started it all in July of 1997. The replacement didn't go well. I picked up an infection in the operating room, which is where everything started. And the journey took me from July of 97 till June of 99 till I finally got it all straightened out. But it was just surgery after surgery, what they call a revision. So they take the knee replacement out. They put a cement spacer, which sounds crazy, but it's like a piece of cement in your knee. And then it's in there for a certain amount of time through antibiotics. They take it out, they put a new replacement in, and hopefully the replacement doesn't get infected. Mine did 3 different times. There was nothing else they could do. I was involved with the Israeli national hockey team, so I had some connections there. One of the players on the team's mom worked at a phenomenal hospital. It saved my life, Asuta in Tel Aviv. I went there. I call it the 3 craziest days of my life. I went there on June the 8th. I saw the doctor. They amputated my leg on June the 9th. And on June the 10th, I was 100% healthy.
So one thing I just have a question about that one is, once you lost your leg, I know this is kind of like sounds weird, but did you feel like a part of you was missing, not like the leg, but I'm talking, do you feel a part of you inside internally? Do you feel you were missing a little part of yourself?
No, never.
No.
And I tell this to people all the time. I lost my leg 25 years ago, June 9th, 99. It was just June that passed a few months, so 5, 6 months ago, was 25 years. In that 25 years, I've never felt once in my life that poor me, why'd I lose my leg? Oh my God, where's my leg? Anything to do with I've had many issues. You know that. We're going to get into the suicide, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Many, many issues in the last 25 years. Never my leg. The second my leg came off, it was like gone, finished, over with. Let's move on with life.
I like that outlook because it would have been very easy. And I don't think a lot of people would have blamed you if you kind of had that down mindset. So once you lost your leg, you kind of were getting back on your feet. There were some ups and downs along that path. But how did you find, the big thing in your life, which was sledge hockey? How did you end up finding that and getting into it?
Yeah, that's a great story, actually. So I went to a place called Variety Village, and I tell anybody that can go to Variety Village. There's an incredible man there, Archie Allison, who's been there for a billion years. If you meet Archie Allison, tell him you know Rosie or Paul Rosen. Most people know me as Rosie, don't even know my name is Paul Rosen.
Oh,
Um, I went there, incredible place. I met this young man, Shane Smith, who is one of the greatest human beings on the face of the earth. Shane, at 2 years old, got meningitis and lost 3 of his 4 limbs. He's found out this guy's coming to Bridie Village who lived in Thornhill who was Jewish. Shane was Jewish, not a lot of Jewish athletes out there. We started talking. He got me involved with sled hockey, brought me out to play for the Markham Islanders. I played pretty well, pretty fast. One thing led to another. I got invited to try out for Team Canada at 40 years old. And next thing you know, I'm training for the Salt Lake City Olympics.
so were you the oldest? You were the oldest by far, I assume. I don't think there was anybody who would be willing to, at the age of 40, try and go for the Olympics. Obviously, the viewers don't know, but the way I met you was through, obviously, I met you at school, but we both trained at the same goalie school. So, long before I was born, Paul was training with my goalie coach and his as well, Jamie McGuire. Great guy, obviously helped you get to where you are today. So, kind of walk us through the first time you met Jamie and the first time you got to that rink and you told him what you wanted to do, what was that like?
That was crazy because I was just going around looking for something. I didn't know what. I knew I wanted to play. I played really well the first time I played goal, but I needed guidance. And a friend of mine told me about Jamie McGuire. I called him up. He said, "Come to York University." I had no clue what to expect. I got on the ice, and it was just him, Jeff Rumble, and myself. I got in my sled. The first shot was an absolute cannon. You know how Rumble shoots. Hit me right in the head, and I just shook my head and never complained. That I'm in the net. A lot of goalies in sled hockey, if you're afraid of the puck, you're in serious trouble because what would hit an able-bodied goalie in the stomach would hit a sled hockey goalie in the face.
Absolutely.
And I just turned to him and said, I want to be the best in the world. And we just started working. And he knew at that point, and in all the years I trained with him, he never treated me as a disabled hockey player once. It was, we're doing drills, you're doing it the same. I was on the ice with you many times from when you were young to when you were older. You did a drill, I did a drill. We adapted in any way. If we were disciplined to skate, I had to do the same thing. And that's why, because I really only trained with the sled hockey guys when we were together as a team. Other than that, I only trained with able-bodied players, and
Right.
that's what got me so good so fast.
One of my questions, actually, I don't even know the answer to this. No clue at all. Why did you decide to be a goalie in sledge hockey instead of a right winger?
So the first time I saw the game, I was a big kid. I was like 6 feet, 220, and most of the guys who were flying around were young and small and fast, and I was no way going to keep up with them. And I saw the goaltending, and I figured I was a catcher in baseball. The biggest part of goaltending in sled is that glove. I had a wicked glove as a catcher, and I figured I could be really good. And I did not want to just be average, Aaron. Tell this to kids all the time, don't settle for mediocrity. Strive for greatness. Sometimes you can't get greatness, but if you don't strive for greatness, you'll never, ever understand what it's like. So for me, it was only one opportunity to be the best I could be. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. When I first started playing, I never thought the best I could be was the best in the world.
Yeah.
Uh, that came from a lot of hard work and a lot of great coaching.
Yeah. So yeah, it's one thing I just want to talk about real quick is like this is an issue for a lot of athletes too. And people wonder, athletes after their playing careers and the effects that it has on them mentally. Like for myself, I'm a young guy, right? But it's the competitive factor that athletes have that really, shapes how they mentally see the game. For me, it's one of those things. I want to play high level. I want to be the best, just like you. Everyone wants to be the best, right? And it gets to a certain point, and you see this in retirements and athletes that they retire because they're not at the top of their game. They could keep playing, they could go down, they could go overseas, but it's that competitive spirit that really, makes you want to be the best. And I feel like that's a thing for athletes too, and why, sometimes they struggle. If you're not at the top of your game, if you're not performing, it could be a little bit detrimental. So heading into, your camp and all that, you were trying out for Team Ken, the team. What was that like? You had lots of people who have been doing this way longer than you going into it. Did you feel you were the best at camp? Did you feel that it was going to be your net no matter what? Or did you have any doubt?
So I had three goals when I set this up, and I tell people all the time, goal setting is massive. So when Jamie finally set me up to go for the camp, for my first camp ever, my first goal was to make the team. The
Yeah.
goalie at the time, who was the number one, Pierre Pichette, was one of the best of the best of the best. So I never went in thinking, here, this 40-year-old guy who's never played this game is going to take the spot of this guy who's a legend. So my first goal was realistic. It was make the team.
Yeah.
Salt Lake City was 2 years later. I was fine with being the backup and learning the game.
That was
Uh,
2002, right?
Two, correct. My second goal was to be the number one starter for the next games, which was Torino 2006.
Mhm.
And my last goal, my third goal, was when I left the game, whenever I did, I was no clue that everybody that knew the game would know my name, whether I was the best in the world forever or I set records that would never be broken. Just people, when they said my name, they would know, oh my God, yeah, that guy was Canadian's goalie. He was incredible. Those were the three goals I set. And they were realistic goals from the start. It wasn't starting playing and be the best in the world in a week and a half. That's an unrealistic goal,
Mm.
especially at my age.
Yeah.
Now, 14 years after my retirement, did I reach all those goals? The first goal, I can tell you yes. The second goal, I can tell you yes. The third goal, that's up for you to research and figure out. I tell people all the time, don't tell people how great you are. Let them figure out how great you are.
I love that. It's good. And just talking a little bit more about the 2002 in Salt Lake City. You went from Paul Rosen, a guy that everyone in his community knew, to Paul Rosen, someone that people all over Canada, all sledge hockey athletes, young people who are maybe listed, missing a leg or an arm or something, we're looking up to, watching out on the big screen. How was that transition from being somewhat of a regular guy to someone that people looked up to?
I loved it. I truly believe that everybody's on this earth for some different reasons. Through my grandfather and the things he did, coming over from Poland to running the first ever Jewish radio program for Chin Radio and Johnny Lombardi, I had that in me. And this was my outlet that I wasn't sure why I was on this earth. And it was to lose my leg and get people to see ability through disability. That's where it started. It started when I lost my leg, to say, I have an opportunity here. Hockey is my guide to get people to see, because I knew I wasn't going to play forever, but I knew I was going to be able to motivate and inspire forever. And still to this day, my number one goal till the day I leave this earth is to get people to see two things, really. Number one is to get people to see ability through disability, whether you're missing a leg or two legs or you're in a wheelchair. It doesn't matter. I want them to see ability, what I've accomplished, what some incredible young kids, boys, girls from Toronto, from Thornhill, from Vancouver, from Newfoundland, it doesn't matter, can accomplish if they put their mind to it. And the other one, and I'm sure we're going to get into this too, is to break the stigma of drug addiction and alcoholism, and understand that it's a disease. It's not something that somebody wakes up and go, oh man, I'm going to be a drug addict tomorrow.
So yeah, one thing that I just want to preface right here as we're talking about it, right, is that, if you're listening to this podcast right now, you hear us talk about, Paul having addiction at the age of 15, and you're probably wondering, right, like, how did you break that addiction? How did you end up, going to play in the Olympics and just magically get rid of your addiction? But as you're going to explain, hopefully with this next question, the addiction never left and people didn't know and it was there. Did some reading up on you in between periods of games. And this is the Olympics. This is something that Paul's always worked for. In between periods, you were popping Percocets. In between, is that correct?
It is correct.
In between periods. And, kind of talk to us about, did this start in 2002 or was this was this also going on in Salt Lake City?
Yeah, this started when I was 15 and never
Yeah.
stopped. It
So,
actually never, my addiction has never stopped until 34 months ago. I'm 34, as of last week, I'm 34 months clean and sober. It never really stopped from 15 till 34 months ago. I had pieces where it was slowed down, it
yeah.
sped up, but it never did stop. And yeah, when I was in Salt Lake, when I was training, when I was in, the one thing that I was fortunate about was I never had to make a decision, because as a Paralympic athlete, unlike an Olympic athlete, you can take certain drugs
Mhm.
because of your disability. They just have to know it, and they had no clue how much. They
Yeah.
knew I was on painkillers because of my leg and different things, and I was a great actor. I say most addicts are Academy Award actors. We have to be,
Mhm.
and I was always a good actor.
Yeah.
So the fact that I could take the amount of drugs that I could take legally, because I was a Paralympian, people had no clue I was taking the amount I was taking. Our doctors had no clue till I was drug tested a couple times and I was okay, but they were like baffled that I could play at the level I was playing at with the amount of narcotics in my system. Most people would have died or been sleeping, not playing at a world class level.
So about playing, while suffering through addiction, was there a fear going through your head that maybe people will find out and there'll be some negative repercussions and maybe your image will be ruined? Was that going through your head at the time, or was it more of a thing where you had that addiction and it was just, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do?
Oh yeah, 100%. I never had that attitude of I don't give it, whatever. To me, my legacy and my moral compass has been like, my dad was my guy. He was my hero. He just passed away a couple of weeks ago. And he always taught me, you only have one image. You only have one opportunity to teach people what you are and who you are. So yeah, I was doing tons of things that I wasn't proud of, but I couldn't disappoint, especially kids.
Mhm.
That's why my first suicide attempt was so hard, that not that I was going to die or live, but that people were going to see me and go, oh my God, what happened? Paul's like Mr. Never Give Up. What happened? then writing the book was important because I wanted to show people that I'm the same as you.
Hmm.
When the doors are open, everybody sees me, and I'm like, "Hey, how you doing here? What's going on?" And then when the doors close, the demons that I had, and I had many demons, I still do. They attacked me. The difference with me now is the demons I do not allow in the front door. I go to the back door, I talk to them, and get off the property. My biggest problem was I always allowed them in the front door when everybody was gone, and that's I lived two lives. I lived a life of Paul Rosen, and I lived a life of Rosie.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to get onto the life of Rosie a little bit more, but talking a little bit more about the gold medal, in 2006, huge win for Team Canada. It was what was expected, right? Everyone expects Canada in hockey to get a gold medal, right? What was that experience like? Obviously, you were playing, you were starting in that tournament, and what was that kind of like getting the opportunity to compete as a starting goalie for Team Canada in the 2006 Olympics?
Well, it wasn't expected at all, to be honest with you, in Torino. In Salt Lake City, we were ranked number one, and we ended up in fourth.
Oh yeah.
The entire program was turned upside down when Hockey Canada took us over in 2005. We were never a part of Hockey Canada until 2005. We got a new coach, Jeff Snyder, who, for those of you who are listening, Dan Snyder was with the Atlanta Thrashers. Dan Heatley was driving a Ferrari. Dan Heatley crashed the car. Dan Snyder was killed. Dan's uncle, Jeff, was our coach. We turned our team into a family. 15 hearts, one beat. We went into Torino ranked number 4 in the world. We didn't care. We were there to win it all. I happened to have the greatest week of my entire life, winning the gold medal with my team, getting the first shutout in the history of Canadian
Yeah.
hockey. The mask is in the Hall of Fame. Since then, Shannon Zabados has got a couple of shutouts for the women's team. Carey Price, who I know is one of your heroes,
Oh yeah.
got a shutout in Sochi in 2014. But I'm very proud of my shutout being the first ever, the mask being in the Hall of Fame. It was a ton of pressure. It was something I'll never forget as long as I live. The crazy thing, too, is that was in 2006 in Torino, Italy. The Olympics are coming up next year in 2026 in Milan, Italy.
Hmm.
Canada's not won since 2006. The Americans won in 10, 14, 18, and 22.
Yep. So kind of going back to the gold medal, walk us through the tournament a little bit. Walk us through, who you guys played, some final scores, head to the semis, the finals, and finish that story.
So we got there, and we sort of slipped in. Nobody had a clue about Team Canada. We were fourth place. The Norwegians were winning the gold medal 100%. So our first game, we destroyed Italy 13-0, and then we destroyed the Swedes. We beat the Americans, and then we played the Norwegians in a nothing game. It didn't matter because we were playing Germany in the semis, and Norway was playing US in the semis. So the game meant nothing. It was the worst first period I had in my entire career. I never let more than 3 goals in, and maybe 3 or 4 times my entire career in a whole game. I let 4 goals in the first period. We were down 4-1, and this is really important to anybody out there. The experience you have and the camaraderie you have as a goalie to a coach, it's much different than any other player. You know that, and our coach, Jeff Snyder, who was the greatest coach I ever had and a friend of mine, and I was older than him as a player, he was going to put our backup in, Benoit Saint-Amand, nice kid, because we were down 4-1. The game meant nothing. The crowd was packed and jammed, and I begged him. I said, please don't put Benny in because we're going to play, in my opinion. We're going to beat Germany. Norway's going to beat the U.S. We're going to play them in the gold medal game. They've never scored more than 1 or 2 goals on me. They're going to go into that game thinking they beat me for 4, and they're going to win the gold medal. I had to have a mindset of showing them that that was a fluke. I said to them, if you play me the rest of this game, I will not let another goal in the rest of the tournament. And as a goalie, you shouldn't say that.
No.
There's still 8 more periods to go, two
Yeah.
against Norway, and then the semifinal and the final.
Mhm.
He said, okay, we lost that game 4-1. I did not let another goal in. We ended up beating Germany the next day 5-0, and then we ended up beating Norway in the gold medal games 3-0. So it came to fruition. I had 8 shutout periods. We won the gold medal. I was terrified. I would never tell anybody that, but I was terrified. And somebody for CBC asked me when the game ended, and they handed me a microphone. It was Don Cherry live from Coach's Corner from Madison Square Garden, congratulating me on the shutout and the gold medal. And they asked me when I felt comfortable that we were going to win the gold medal. We scored one in the first, one in the second, and then with 4 seconds left, Billy Bridges scored an empty netter. So I said I was comfortable when the buzzer sounded.
Yeah.
That's when I was comfortable. I
Mhm.
was not comfortable until because even with a minute left and up 2-0, Norway could have scored 3 and beat us 3-2.
No, I can't just stop talking about the gold medal game without bringing up that glove save. It's a picture seen everywhere. If you look at Paul Rosen, it'll be one of the first pictures you see. I have one up on my wall. I have it autographed by you. Such a classic image of Canadian hockey. Walk us through that play. I know it was a long time ago, but try and walk us through that play a little bit. I know the guy who stopped, pretty big name. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite moments in my entire career. Rolf Weiner Pedersen, one of the best players in the world. We hated each other. We respected each other. I want people to understand that. We respected each other. He was a great Norwegian player. I was a great Canadian player, but we hated each other. And he had this play where he took the puck on his right hand. If he dipped his shoulder, he was throwing it under his sled and letting a bullet go with his left. And he had a cannon shot. He was coming down the left side. Graham Murray, my defenseman, was slipping through right in front of me with Eskil Hagen, number 7 on Norway. So I knew that I didn't have to worry about Hagen because Murray had him locked up. I realized when a lot of guys do the same move, and I realized when I saw the shoulder dip of Rolf Weiner Pedersen that he was going underneath to the left. That's when I realized that, oh my God, I've given up way too much of the long side of the net, and I was in trouble. He was so good that he ripped it long side, top corner, and I reached with every ounce of energy, courage, God on my side, my glove hand, which was at that time the best in the world. And the rest is history in the picture. I made the save
That's
and did
it.
a little roll. And yeah, I was pretty happy.
And just for the viewers, when Paul says that that guy had a cannon of a shot, I had never got the opportunity to go on the ice with any, Paralympic sledge hockey players. Never had the opportunity until last year. I called you about it right after. It was unbelievable. I had the opportunity. There was a bunch of Canadian players, I think McGregor, Tyler
Tyler McGregor, the captain. You were on the ice with Dominic Casalino
as
and
well.
some
Yes.
of the guys who had really good shots.
So I was working the McGuire camp actually, and I was gonna train in the afternoon, and I was about to be on rink 5. I look on, there's a bunch of players out there, sledge hockey players, and they're just shooting around. And I'm like, hey, you guys want a goalie? They're like, yeah, like come out. And honestly, I can't even explain like how shocked I was. I laugh at myself for this, but I said to them, I'm like, do you want me to stand up and play regular? Do you want me to go on my like how do you guys want? They're like, they kind of just laughed a little bit. They're like, just play like you normally do. The angles, the way they release the puck, they go
Yep.
through the sled with the shot and they go through the other side and shoot the deeks. I was astonished. So the shots are ridiculous. The skill is ridiculous. And it's coming from a different angle too, right? So for a goaltender to be in that position, especially Paul, right? You're not standing up, you're down, right? So the elevation on the shot, it's a scary thing, and it's really, really cool to be a part of. So it was an
It's the only,
awesome opportunity.
it's the only way where you can score over a goalie's head and under the crossbar. Uh, and you had some really good players. I remember that when we talked, and then I talked to Tyler McGregor after, and he told me about it. But you were also missing the hardest shot I've ever had to stop in my entire life in Billy Bridges. He had an absolute cannon, over 80 miles an hour with one hand.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And the cardio, the way these guys train, right? Like they were, that's got to be so tiring, right? Like doing drills nonstop. We were out there for an hour 20. I was exhausted. They were still going, playing 2-on-2, 3-on-3. And there's a lot of contact in these games too, which is, something we'll talk about a little bit more.
Gold medal. Everything you needed in a goaltender was Carey Price. Cool, calm, collected, beautiful wife, great kids, great family, millions of dollars. Yet addiction
So,
took him down a dark road
mhm.
that people were like, how could Carey Price Forget about Paul Rosen for a second.
Yeah.
How could Carey Price go down this road? He had everything, because addiction is a disease. It's not a mindset. It's not something that you wake up one day and say you're going to do that. A knee injury again, and this happens to so many elite athletes, and this is what we're talking about, athletes right now. So many elite athletes. Carey Price never planned on having that addiction take him to where a terrible knee injury, and before you know it, even the great Carey Price is not invincible.
Yep.
So with me, yeah. Sorry, the Olympic hangover, the Olympic depression, it never went away. I managed it the best I could until Vancouver, and then that's when my life started spiraling into a very destructive force after the Vancouver Games.
Yeah, like I wanted to say that's a great point, right? And it's like we all idolize the athlete, but we don't really know the person. Growing up, I idolized the athlete, right? I was a huge Carey Price fan. The
Yep.
athlete, the goalie, the calm, collected, like you said, the amazing athlete he was. But away from the rink, we don't really get to see that part of the athlete. And I think that's a super, important thing that, leads a lot of people into tough mental health situations. So that's a great point right there. So kind of getting more into, after the Olympics, as we talked about that, this is a little bit of a lighter story with a good ending. Your gold medal stolen. And I'm going to let you take this story away. It's a great story. Olympic gold medal stolen. Walk us through it.
So a year later, my good friend Kerry Goulet, the Gooch, and we've been doing things together for years. The Gooch and Rosie show. You can watch our podcast all the time. We got to get you on one of these days.
Absolutely.
And it was, so the medal was won on March the 18th, 2006. This was February 7th, 2007. We were at Downsview Park. We were doing a ball hockey event for Stop Concussions, one of my companies that I'm a huge part of, an ambassador. I've had 12 concussions with Keith Primo and Kerry Goulet. And it got to the end of it. There was a table with all gold medals on it. Cheryl Pounder, dear friend, a hockey player for the women's national team for years, now a great broadcaster for TSN and the Ottawa Senators. She's incredible, does all the women's games. She said to me, Rosie, where's your medal? We're packing up. I said, it's beside yours, Pounds. No, it's not. And then we realized the medal was stolen. She called Cassie Campbell. Cassie Campbell, whose husband, Brad Pascal, was the head of our program with Hockey Canada. He told Don Cherry, who was a friend. Don got on Coach's Corner. You can archive it, February 7th, 2007. Don got on Coach's Corner. He said, the rat who stole Rosie's medal, put it in a mailbox and the police won't be involved. A week later, I got the medal back. It was in the mailbox. And yeah.
Medal did not come in the same condition, did it? Was it?
It did not. It did not. It is not. It is not looking the same. But I refuse to get a new one. I refuse to get a new ribbon. I absolutely love the journey it was on. People ask me questions about it all the time. I take it all over. Last night I was at talking to a team of under 15s. I brought, the first thing I did was hand the medal to the team, let them all hold it and touch it. If you want 30 seconds, I still have my stuff from last night's talk on my dresser. I can take 10 steps and grab it. And
I would love that. I would love that.
Give me a second.
Yep. I'll tell a quick story here about that medal. So I got the opportunity to hold that medal countless times. And, it's crazy. You don't expect to ever be able to hold a gold medal. It's not an experience everyone gets. I always wondered why Paul wouldn't, replace that string, because it was a medal that just was, mangled. Like the string was gone. I was surprised he never replaced it, as you're about to see here. But, he said it added to the story, and I thought that was pretty cool. And, as you can see.
The one good thing about living in a basement apartment is I only have 10 steps to go get anything.
Beautiful.
So there it is right there.
Yep.
And that's what's left of the ribbon.
That's how you got it back. See, I love that. I was always wondering, and great story on that one.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a pretty sick. And one other story I think is worth telling is the game puck. Something about the game puck from the gold medal. Why isn't that puck in the Hockey Hall of Fame, Paul?
Because I was given the puck by Jeff Snyder, our coach, with the shutout, and I gave them my mask. I gave them pretty well anything they wanted, but that game puck means the world to me. It's something. It's something. People say, "Well, it's maybe only $3." When they bought it for wherever they bought it. I honestly, and me, I don't just say things to say things. Somebody offered me $1 million for that puck today, and I could use the money. I'm not doing phenomenal financially. I would not sell that puck because that puck to me, it represents the story of a kid who was told he could never achieve greatness, and that was the first ever shutout in the history of Canadian hockey in a gold medal game. So that puck to me means more than anything. It means actually more than the medal, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Some things are worth more than money. I love that. So kind of going towards, 2010, it was a little bit not as good of a story with the result, but you were an older guy. You won a gold medal. Was there any doubt at that time that you'd be back for 2010, or was it something you gave thought to, or was it like, I'm coming back no matter what?
Yeah, I was coming back no matter what. I
Yeah.
knew that after Torino, I knew I had one more games left in me. I wanted to retire at 50 years old. I wanted to do something nobody had ever done before, and I wanted to win back-to-back gold medals. Unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. The movie part of the story did not end the way we wanted to. You have, and it was funny because I made this talk to this team. The most talented team I ever played on was Vancouver. We ended up in fourth. The least talented team I ever played on, but the tightest team I ever played on was in Torino, and we won the gold medal.
Yeah.
You cannot just expect to win by showing up. We played Japan. We had a great tournament, but we had one bad game. We played Japan in the semifinals. We looked past them before the game even started. I knew we were in trouble by the vibe in the dressing room. We were looking to the United States the next day. I truly believe if we beat Japan, we would have beat the United States and won the gold medal. But that Japan game, by the time we realized that we were in a game, it was over with.
Yeah. And that happens a lot too, right? It's like you overlook your opponent, you're not really thinking, especially on home ice too. It must have been a crazy experience, playing in front of the home crowd, a little bit different in that kind of you know, environment. And you guys in the bronze medal game couldn't take it home, eh? Or did you guys win the bronze medal? What was
No, no, we didn't. Canadian teams never play well in the bronze medal game.
yeah.
I actually had a really good game. We were up 1-0. That we were being dominated, and
Were you guys playing in that one?
Norway.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and I made a save with about 1 minute and 30 seconds left. I went to scoop it out of the crease, and Adam Dixon, my defenseman, put his hand on it. They got a penalty shot. Rolf Weiner Pedersen, great move, deserved to beat me on that. And then they scored a fluke with less than 1 second left. Hit my defenseman's glove, went over my head and in the net. And we lost 2-1.
Was this such lucky goalie? How do you play a breakaway out of curiosity? Like, how do you like come out a little bit more? Like, what's the strategy to play a breakaway?
So the one thing I did, and I prided myself on knowing the best players in the world. So very rarely will a third line player have a breakaway, Aaron. So if that was the case, then I just have to guess where he was going. But there was so many guys that did the same. A lot of forwards are stupid. They do the same moves.
Mhm.
So it was a Rolf Weiner Pedersen. I would come out as far as I could, follow him back, and know he was going from one hand to the other. And even at that, he could still beat me, which he did in that game. I made a great play, and I did everything I possibly could, and he still beat me. As a sled hockey goalie, it's so hard because moving backwards is not the same as moving with skates. You're skating with your arms, and you still have to make the save. So it's just something that was difficult. It's knowing the guys. I prided myself on knowing the guys. There were certain guys that I knew were going to shoot. So you come out to cut the angle down, knowing they're not going to deke no matter what. And I had a really good glove.
I like it. So, kind of talking about a little bit more about addiction. It's just more serious topics here. How were you able to play at such a high level, win an Olympic gold medal while using drugs and alcohol?
No clue. Can't answer that. I wish I could. I wish I could tell you a phenomenal story that everybody would go, I have no clue. I
So,
was baffled. Sometimes when the team doctors would say to me, so you took 6 narcotics, very strong narcotics, in the second intermission. Not one, not two, like the normal person would do, but six. I always had an addictive mind. So if the label said two, I knew that two weren't going to help me.
Mhm.
Why does that make sense? It doesn't make sense. So four, six, whatever, 10 I've taken at one time. Um, so I shouldn't have been able to survive, let alone play at that level. So I can't answer that question. I wish I could. I don't want to lie to you. I think what you're doing is incredible, and I want to tell a proper story. I don't know. I don't know how it worked out. Maybe God just. I'm a big believer in God, and maybe He just said, you know what, we're going to let this happen because there's a better story 20 years down the road.
I like it. And that's the thing, right? Is like sometimes, like, especially with addiction and stuff, you don't know. Like, you have no idea how you did it. You get through periods of your life where it just happened and there's no story for it. And, it just,
Yeah. Well, I don't want to get sad here, but I have a lot of friends that I've lost in the last 4 or 5 years through overdose, and I think about it sometimes. Why didn't I die in that overdose? Yep, my friend did when we took the exact same thing. It's your body makeup, and it's not your time.
so yeah, I just want to tell our viewers right now is we're going to talk about a serious topic here about suicide. And, this is a very, important story. Just a little bit of a trigger warning for you guys if you're not good with that kind of topic. Maybe pause the video. I'll link below at what point the topic is done, but we're gonna kind of got to get into that topic right now. It's a big part of your story.
I,
So
I, I think just for a second there, Aaron, I think that's a phenomenal point. I really appreciate. I do this a lot. I do podcasts all over the world, and I really think that's a kudos to you. I think that's an incredible thing. And if somebody is struggling right there, and you need to make a phone call, you can call 310 COPE. 310 COPE is a number where somebody will answer the phone 24 hours a day. I've used it many times.
and yeah, just one little point before we talk about that too is if you're ever wondering what kind of guy Paul Rosen is, I'll tell you a quick story right now about him. There was always a time where I was struggling, and I text Paul once in a while. I text him, ask how he's doing and stuff. And the one thing that always stuck with me that Paul said to me is he said, if you are ever in trouble anytime, call me any single time. I don't care if it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't care if it's 5 a.m. I don't care what day of week. Call me anytime you need me, and I will always be there to pick up the phone. And that is just something I think you said this to me probably 2 years ago, and I still remember exactly what you said. And that's something that, I like to talk about on the podcast too, is being there for people, right? Like Kendra said, it's one thing to say what you're going to do, but you have to show up for people and you have to, take initiatives. And one thing that really, really stuck with me is him, showing me like, I'm always here for you. And that's one thing that I think we need a lot more of. And I just want to say thank you for that. And that's, something I've always carried with me and I'll always remember.
Anytime. I remember in the field at York University, sitting on the bench watching the kids play soccer. And Kendra Fisher is one of my all-time favorites. That episode you did with her was incredible. She's an elite athlete that's not just an elite athlete, but an elite person that gives her time and effort because it's the right thing to do.
So yeah, now we're going to talk a little bit about, like a very sad topic in suicide, right? It's a very big issue. Lots of people, have attempts, lots of people die from suicide. And, if I can maybe reach one person with this podcast, I'd be happy, maybe save one person. So kind of going up a little bit into Paul's story, I don't want to mix it up. So I'm going to take a little clip that I wrote that I know. So I'm going to read off it. You wrote 3 goodbye letters, one to each of your children, put on a black t-shirt and shorts so no one would be startled finding a naked corpse. Separated Oxycontin painkillers that he bought into 3 piles, and it was 10, 10, and 15. And you down them all with a fistful and down them all, and you also did it with orange juice. So that was the story. I'm gonna let you talk about whatever you're comfortable about that. So kind of walk us through what that time was like.
Comfortable about talking to it about everything because there was a reason why I didn't die. I took the 35 pills, 10, 10, and 15, and then I got into bed and I put Sports Center on and I figured I was just going to fall asleep and never wake up again. I left a note to Stephanie, Sammy, and Nikki. I just didn't want to be around anymore. I didn't want to die, Aaron. I just wanted the demons to stop. And I had so many demons in my life that I didn't want to talk about it. I just wanted to leave. And I didn't feel I was worthy of living anymore. I figured I was more of a burden on everybody than anything else. I realize now that that was silly and not right. And I never reached out to anybody. So 45 minutes later, I hadn't died. I hadn't fallen asleep. I knew my pain threshold was incredible, but 35 oxys, I should have died. So now I'm in panic mode, and I started searching around the apartment, and I found a bottle of Windex, a full bottle of Windex. And this is where God is on your side sometimes, where you don't understand it. If I didn't do what I did with the Windex, I would have, the doctor said, eventually in another hour or two. Sometimes things are slower. They go into your bloodstream slower. You're not using an injection, you're using a pill. And I would have eventually died. So I was impatient, and I grabbed the impatiency saved my life. I grabbed the Windex. I drank the entire bottle of Windex. Um, I thought not the smartest thing in the world, but it did save me because the Windex was so bad and so violently in my system that I started vomiting at such a rate that I threw up enough of the painkillers to get me to the hospital. I didn't realize this till weeks later when I was in the psychiatric ward at the Toronto General that I was the one that called 911. People thought, oh, who called 911? I didn't know. I was the one that called 911. They came to my apartment. I was living in Queens Quay. They took me to St. Mike's Hospital, where the next 24 hours they figured out how to get enough out of me to save my life. Then I was put into the psychiatric ward at Toronto General for 17 days, where I was put on a drug called Suboxone, which is a blocker to, it's like methadone. It's a blocker to the nerve endings in your brain to get you to start to withdraw and understand how to survive without the narcotics. And the journey started. And I was fortunate when I left the hospital that my daughter Stephanie took me in, and I stayed with her for over a year. And the recovery started. It didn't end there. I was almost 3 years clean and sober. And then I had a situation, a life situation that I won't talk about right now because I don't want to bring the other person in on it. And I didn't know how to handle that. And again, I tried a second suicide attempt where I took 38 sleeping pills. This is another God moment where I wrote something on Facebook, don't remember it at all. Friend I hadn't talked to for years saw it, called my daughter. She called the police. They did a wellness check, took me to South Lake Hospital where I was in a coma for 72 hours, woke up from that coma, went to a meeting that night, and I'm 34 months clean and sober right now. The difference, Aaron, between me now and my sobriety and my cleanliness in drugs, my recovery, to 3 years ago where I let something bother me mentally and tried to do it again, is now I do not do it on my own. I went to trauma counseling. I have a therapist. I have a great sponsor. I do not deal with any of these life-changing situations on my own. I reach out. Isolation is the biggest killer to anybody with depression or suicide tendencies. You cannot isolate. You have to reach out for help. I don't care if it's your friend, your mother, your father. Some people can't talk to family. People lose a limb. They can't talk to their family. They don't know what it is. They have to talk to somebody who's been through it. I talk to people that have been through it, that know how to handle. Listen, my dad just died 10 days, 12 days ago, something like that. My dad was my hero. I was in Australia coaching for 6 months. He said to me, I'm not going to die till you come back. And he did. I was holding his hand with my sister. That devastated me. The first couple of days, I thought about a lot of things, a lot of dark things, but I didn't do it on my own. I reached out to my sponsor, I reached out to my friends in addiction, not to my family, but to my friends in addiction. and they got me through it, Aaron. And that's the number one thing I want to let people know. There's nothing wrong with feeling down. There's nothing wrong when people say, "Oh my God, I'm so silly. I can't believe I did that. I'm so stupid. I can't believe I did that." No, no, no. That's part of life. Part of the journey is having issues. But the way you get rid of these issues, and I wish we could get people that are suicidal before they do what I did, is we could get them to sit down and talk, because there's always a light at the end of the tunnel.
I love that. And it's such an important message. And just to add on, if anybody who's listening to this needs anybody to talk to, there's always somebody, there's great initiatives being taken. And one thing that I just want to point out too is that like Paul telling his story saves people. Talking about issues saves people. And I'm no expert in that field, but I can assume that hearing that other people go through the same thing that you go through, thinking that you're not abnormal and you're just dealing, like you said, a disease. It's not a thing in your head, it's a disease. And once you can kind of, understand that a lot of people do have this disease, it becomes a little bit easier to talk about. So just one little follow-up question on that. At the time, did you feel like you had somebody to talk to? And if the answer is no, do you think that that could have potentially saved you having the right resources around you?
I knew I had people to talk to. I knew I had my sister, who's one of the greatest people in the entire world. I could have talked to her. She reached out to me a million times. The crazy story is I stayed at her place the night before, and she told a story at my dad's funeral to one of her friends. And I ended up leaving. She begged me to stay that night. And she said to one of her best friends, my brother's going to kill himself tomorrow. But she couldn't do anything. I was the one that had to do it. And I just didn't want to burden her. And that's the biggest problem, Aaron, with people that are at that level. I could have talked to my sister. She would have got me the help. I guarantee you. But I didn't want to burden her. And that's the problem. You're going through, oh my God, my life is terrible. Life's not terrible. But that's how I'm thinking. My life is terrible. I don't want to burden you. I don't want to burden my sister. I don't want to burden my brother. I don't want to burden my best friend. I don't want to burden you. I will deal with it myself. And then the wheels start going. And when the wheels start going, you realize, you know what? I'm just better off not here. And that is so not true.
Yeah, like you said, it's a disease and, it leads you down a dark path. And, I hope everyone can get out of it. And I'm really glad you did. And obviously, you sharing your story is very impactful. After the two, attempts and things were getting a little bit, I don't want to say they were getting better, but as you were starting to, recover in a sort of sense, did you feel like what was life like after? Did you feel it was heading upwards? Did you still deal with these, thoughts every once in a while? What was kind of the mindset at this point?
Roller coaster. Good days, bad days, going to a lot of meetings, talking to a lot of people. I'm a huge, huge, huge believer in trauma counseling. Anybody that's had issues as a kid, anybody that's had issues, whether it's sexually or happened to them or whatever, trauma counseling, a good trauma counselor. There's a lot of people out there that are not good. You have to find the right one for you. But a trauma counselor is incredible, because a good trauma counselor will make you understand it happened. You can't change it, but it wasn't your fault. And that's a lot of people that went through trauma, really bad trauma. They believe it was their fault. They believe they deserved it. I deserve to have this happen to me, which is horseshit. There's no way. And I finally learned that. And that's why I'm able to get better. And I have great friends, and I was able to go to Australia and coach with one of my best friends in the world, Kerry Goulet, for 6 months and change lives down there with some great young men who were playing for the Melbourne Ice. I just love having the opportunity to get people to see the best in them.
Mhm. So I want to wrap up with two quick questions here. I was kind of wondering, what is life like for you now? So obviously we talked about what it was, what initiatives you took, how you dealt with all these things. You're an older guy now, not super old, just older.
Okay, thanks,
Still
buddy.
amazing.
Thank
Um,
you.
I know you haven't hit the ice in a while. I remember I was on the ice with you maybe 2 years ago, maybe something like that.
Yep.
What's life like for you now? What are your goals? What do you like to do? And just how are you doing in today's day?
That's a great question. So life is up and down. It's good. It's hard. I go to a lot of AA meetings, and NA meetings, Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. I do a lot of things with my friend Kerry Goulet. We have our show, the Gooch and Rosie Show. I love being around hockey players. I love doing talks. I'm helping out again with Kerry Goulet and Justin Pekka, the King Heights Academy High School team. I was in Australia for 6 months. I have 3 kids and I have 5 grandchildren and a sixth coming shortly. That's I love doing that. I'll go over and at some point later tonight, and throw a ball around with my one grandson Zach. He's a sports guy, and then I'll go to a meeting tonight. And I try to keep my life simple. I don't have a partner in my life. I'm on my own. I've been divorced 17 years. Would I like to find love again? Absolutely, I would love to. I'm a giving person. I want to share my life with somebody, but I do understand that I have to take care of myself first. If I don't take care of myself, I'm no good to anybody, whether it's a partner, my friends, my daughter, my son, my grandchildren. And the number one thing with me is I have a legacy. The reason why I lived through those 2 suicide attempts, which the average person shouldn't have, is my legacy is to get people to understand addiction is a disease. If I had cancer, you'd look at me different. I'm a recovering drug addict, and that's something that I will do until the day I die.
Mhm. I love it. And I'm also going to share on this podcast. I'm writing an article about Paul for an assignment that I'm doing. And, I was trying to figure out the title for this article. And I have pulled up my original one, and it was The Inspiring Journey of Paralympic Goaltender Paul Rosen. And that was going to be my title. But the more thought I gave to it, it's like, I didn't even want the word goaltender in there. And I changed it to The Inspiring Life Journey of Paul Rosen because I'm gonna post the link to the article on this page. I want you guys all to read it. I hope it's gonna be good. But the most important thing about your journey is I find it's not a battle to be the best athlete. It was a battle for your life. And that is one of the main things that I think people got to understand is sometimes you're fighting for a bigger thing than sport. Sometimes you're fighting for something bigger. And every day there's people who battle for their lives. And I think it's really great that you shared your story with us today. And to close it off, I just want to also mention the book that Paul has, Never Give Up. If you want to talk about that for a couple of minutes, let us know a little bit about the book. Perfect, right there. So there's a book by Paul Rosen right there, Never Give Up. I've read it. It's amazing. Roger Lajoie, I think he was the one who.
Roger Lajoie, been on the fan, the only original one there, 40 years. Has written 13 books, wrote the Paul Henderson book, the Jimmy Devellano Hockeytown book. Roger was great because he kept it he kept it real and he kept it honest. And it's not like you said, that's one of the greats. I've been interviewed by a lot of people, and I'll blow smoke. You're doing a great job, Aaron. I'm so proud of you. It's not about the hockey journey. Paul Rosen, greatest goalie of all time. Oh my God, look at the jersey, whatever, everything he's accomplished. He's had dinner with the prime minister, 4 different prime ministers. It's about the journey of a kid who battled his whole life with many, many things, learning how to read, learning how to write, leaving school, being troubled, being sexually assaulted, so many different things in his life, not just hockey. The big thing with my life is I've lived climbing up the mountain to the top numerous times. I've stood at the top of the mountain for days, for weeks, for years, and I've slipped down to the bottom. I've slipped down to the bottom so close that I was close to the grave. But I keep grabbing and I keep grabbing that next rung to get back to the top of the mountain. Well, I'm not there now. I'm climbing. Will I get to the top? You're damn right I'll get to the top. Will I stay there? I don't know. Will I slide back down? Maybe. One thing I will tell you, Aaron, and anybody out there listening, till the day I die, I will not stop climbing.
I love
Never, never stop climbing. So don't give up. work hard. Life is incredible. There's stinky days for everybody. Anybody that thinks they've got a phenomenal life every single day, they're lying to you. Life's a journey, but it's a great journey.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great message. And that's one of my favorite expressions that I always say is sometimes you're taking the escalator and sometimes you're taking the stairs, right? Sometimes you got to put in a little more effort to get to the top. And as long as you're, working there, you're doing something right. So super glad you're back climbing that mountain. And I know you'll reach it. We know that.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, so we're going to conclude this episode now. Like I said, Paul Rosen's book, Never Give Up, we're going to link it down below. It's a great read and it's a real story, right? It's a story of someone's life. As Paul said, he doesn't mess around. He's open to talking about his topics, and you're going to hear, about the life of Paul Rosen in a little more detail than you heard today. So check out that book. Link his socials down below too. He's got a great podcast with his buddy Gooch on Facebook. I'll definitely be getting on at some point. And yeah, looking forward to continuing this journey. And I appreciate you coming on and helping me with it.
Anytime. And like I said again, I love the fact that our youth, we're grassroots, will never be where we want to be without grassroots. And grassroots in this journalism is getting people. I remember a couple of years ago when you told me you were thinking about going into this field and knew you're going to be great at it. And that's what it's about. It's about learning. It's about never thinking that you're bigger than you are. And it's about opening your heart and your mind to getting better. And I'm really proud of you, buddy.
Appreciate it. It means a lot. Thank you. All right, guys. That was a great episode. Hope you guys enjoy. And with that, I'm concluding season 2, episode 3 with Paul Rosen. Paul, thank you so much for joining. And we will see you guys all in the next episode. Cheers.